Hi guys, welcome back to Guild Chat. I am back with Byron and Mike, and we were going to talk a little bit today about Heart of Thorns maps. That's been a huge question with Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns, what's coming? And there was the question for a long time of how many maps? But what's more important is how they work, so we're going to kind of go into that. I'm going to look at you first because this has been a thing since launch about all of the different regions that we have in Guild Wars 2 and how Tyria changes, the maps change dramatically. You have all of these great different climates for variety as you go across.
Comparing like the Shiver Peaks going over into more like the plains of Kryta against like the fields of ruin in Ascalon and stuff like that. Yeah, there definitely is a huge dynamic shift as you go from one region to the next in terms of what types of environments and weather conditions you'll see as you're wandering through.
Yeah, you have like this, like in Ascalon, you've got like this blasted landscape that's just starting to come back, and it kind of gets really beautiful, and there's trees up north. And then you go into the Shiver Peaks, you've got the snow, the mountains, all of that. And we've done a lot of work. We've been super proud of how we did that. And we wanted to continue that in Heart of Thorns once we went into the Heart of Maguma. But we had this vertical space to work in.
Yeah.
And we've got these different biomes.
Yeah, so we actually started with looking at how we horizontally kind of blocked out the space and kind of figured out the play areas and things like that. And we actually just kind of swapped it sideways. Now we're doing it on more vertical space. So it's taking a look at, okay, when you go to the jungle, you have various different types, even just like natural rainforests in terms of the treetops to the ground cover to what even goes below. And so we started playing a lot more with that vertical space, and we just started with the same design process of, okay, these are the types of stories that we want to tell. Here's where our natural hubs are going to be. Here's the general flow we want for players as they're going through the maps, and just had more of that verticality space to play with. And then you start adding in gliding and the mastery system, and it starts opening even more modes of transportation, even with like the jump mushrooms and stuff like that. So we started just doing all kinds of crazy things in terms of how you get from one corner of the map to the other, and now you have a three-dimensional space that you're playing with it even more.
There's so much more to work with. I think when it really started hitting home for me was when I went into the Itzel tree village, the Itzel hub, and you have like these rope bridges, and there are all these places where I'm not just going back and forth, but there's also, okay, I can look up and see there's something going on up there, but I need to go back and up and back around again. And it was not just side to side, but there was so much more going on than it looked like at first.
I think for me, I play a lot of the content especially in the Verdant Brink map. I find myself oftentimes like getting either knocked back by an enemy and then falling, being like, oh, this is not going to end up. And
this is not okay.
Being caught by a net or something.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of the times like you'll discover things even by accident, either by falling off or by getting knocked off or even by jumping. And I know a lot of folks like jumping off of things. And so the gliders have really brought and opened up those areas for us in a way that I don't think we were super.
We just didn't anticipate until we actually got in there and started playing with it. Like we had a general idea, but until you like prototype it out and you kind of see how it's going to react, you don't know for sure or what's going to happen. And especially like the craziness that you designers like have when you're like building out all those individual pieces of content. Like,
and by that he means thank you.
Yes. Oh yes, thank you for being crazy. Of course.
You know, I think as we talk, it's easier if we show while we tell. So we do have a couple of videos just that really show off well the depth and width of the map. So we can look at those while we're talking. But you have, I'm just going to pick on you now.
That's fine.
Because we talked so much about adventures yesterday. And again, the jumping mushrooms and gliding is making a huge difference in that. How did you get all of that in there? How did you start working? Was it weird getting into that vertical space?
You know, I think, I worked on the Silver Waste jumping puzzle before this, and so it sort of came a little bit more naturally thinking about that space. I was really prepared for it.
Wait, that was you?
Well, it was me and Josh, yeah. I did a lot of the content design, and he did all the map art.
Josh has taken all the heat. Some of it was yours.
You can blame Josh for that one. But I think when I started transitioning onto the expansion team, it really became one of those things like, oh man, the maps are sort of, we've got a lot of that, we've already have the gliding stuff locked down, we had a lot of that space already starting to develop, so it was really fun for me to go to these different map artists and say, give me a space to play with, what do you think is cool about, what do you want to show me? We've got a cool gliding adventure that goes through an Itzel village that's sort of suspended along the sides of a cliff, and all these places were places that were sort of like, hey, can we make use of this? It's really awesome to be able to fly through and see all these things. And actually there's sort of a funny story with one of the adventures, the Floor is Lava actually. It actually started out in Verdant Brink. And we discovered that we actually had it in a cave and the ceilings were too low. So some of the feedback we got was, when we do those jumps, I really want to be able to like have my camera far out. I don't want to hit the ceiling. I don't want to feel like I'm like sort of claustrophobic about it.
Right.
But we were in a cave, and so when we tried to raise the ceiling, we realized there was content up there, and we were like,
oh no,
it doesn't really make a lot of sense to try to carve out this space. Why don't we actually find a space that's really good for this content and actually move deeper into the jungle? And so it's had a lot of homes in its incarnations.
Oh my gosh! So I have to know. Do you remember what you ran into when you raised that up?
I want to say so. It was in an area with a lot of Itzel, and I think they had a village above, and we didn't want to displace them.
Yeah,
they've been through a lot.
It's been difficult.
Yeah, with Mordremoth and all of that stuff, we felt like maybe they should have some peace and quiet.
Yeah, it's fair.
Going back to kind of the approach to how we've been looking at from an artistic standpoint and things like that, like blending that content into just the environments that have been created. And you go back to like one of the initial trailers and you hear Daniel talking about how we wanted to have this artisanal craftsmanship of having character and personality with just the level environment. And we still have that today. And so it's being able to take those and tell interesting stories on top of that. But again, going back to gliding and with masteries and things like that, we can actually look at, okay, let's try and traverse this in ways that we've never been able to do before. How do we make it so you can actually, use mushrooms to get up the sides of these cliffs, or use gliding to get to locations on the far side of a chasm that before was never something we even considered. And then you start layering on updrafts, ley line gliding, that kind of stuff. And now we just start having even more ways that we can just diversely create this content for players to enjoy.
Yeah. So you mentioned ley line gliding. Can you kind of give a little description? That's one of the things that we haven't shown publicly.
The short version is there's ley line energy that is all throughout the Maguma jungle, and it's connecting various locations, whether it's floating platforms, whether it's getting you across giant caverns and things like that. But your normal gliding is just not good enough to be able to make the jump and use that kind of loose energy. And so that's one of those that as you're leveling up your tiers, soon you'll be able to use updrafts and use those to kind of get up into higher locations. And then towards the end of that track is when you're going to be actually able to use those ley lines and get to locations, bumping you across, letting you almost like water skipping really quickly across these ley line energies to get to other locations.
Yeah. You know what? We have a second gliding video that we can take a look at while we delve into gliding a little bit, because that's such a big part of how these maps work. Yeah. And this was my character, and I'm kind of flying around just seeing what I can see.
Oh man, yeah. I think, let's see.
Okay, so there's updraft. This was in Verdant Brink.
Yep.
But you've got the updrafts that one of the biggest things I noticed was learning to navigate those, because I did get into a couple of tricky situations.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I'm losing altitude, I have nowhere to go. But something that I didn't realize we put in there was that you have these updrafts at different heights.
Yep.
And a part of the skill of gliding is learning to navigate those and learning, okay, if I go up here and then I glide a little bit more, then I can get all the way up here, because there are things at every level, literally down farther than you can see.
To some extent, we look at this as the kind of like, the jumping puzzles. You're always trying to get up to some crazy location, right? Now with updrafts, it gives you even more tools for us to kind of play with and figure out, okay, how do you get from one location to the other? We saw this a little bit in yesterday when we were talking about the adventures and showing how you use the jump mushrooms in the masks area to kind of get to various locations. And they don't always send you to the same height. Some of them will go up a little bit higher, some will go a little bit lower. And you can see right now that this just gives us, the environment artists, more tools for us to play with and trying to figure out how you actually traverse these maps. Plus at the same time, we can do new styles of content with this that we never could have done before.
Yeah, I think it also gives us an opportunity in a lot of cases to show off. You get a lot of different angles. We had the first-person camera coming in a while back, and I think now we have another opportunity for these cinematic moments where you're no longer sort of like looking up at the mountain, but now you're looking down at it, or you're flying alongside it really quick, or gliding around alongside it really closely. And I think that provides a very unique and different experience that we haven't experienced before.
Yeah, it's afforded so many opportunities. I know if you're keeping up with the story, you know that the packed airships have just been smashed to bits. And I am so sad I didn't get this. This was after we were recording. I was just still kind of learning, just looking around and seeing what I could see. And I saw one of the packed airships in the distance. You got a little look at it earlier. And I'm gliding around, and I got to thinking, I wonder, so kind of headed over that way and found out that I can land on that packed airship and run around on top of it and just look at the wreckage. I got inside, and it was so cool, and it was so unexpected that I was a little worried, and I instant messaged Aaron, one of our map artists, and I was like, hey, Aaron, so I'm inside this packed airship. I mean, I'm like literally running around inside the wreckage. Is this right?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be able to do that? And I could like just about see how smug he was from across the building. He was like, yep, that is correct, ma'am. Have fun.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, like going back to the whole idea of the verticality of these maps, I think, you know, from a lore perspective and from a sort of a story standpoint, you also have this very interesting tension. Like, you know, when with that packed video at the end of season 2, where we attack the jungle, we're trying to fight off Mordremoth. I think that the way that we've introduced and sort of the way we traverse through these maps is definitely a feeling like of coming in from above and really entering Mordremoth's lair, right? Like, you know, the plants coming up from the ground, and you're sort of coming in to meet them. Sort of reminded me of when about the story of the Titans, where it was the gods versus the Titans, and if you could pull them out, off of their earthly foothold, you could defeat them. And I feel we sort of get a similar feeling where we're fighting Mordremoth, we're coming in from above, and we really have the power behind us in that regard.
That, by the way, is that airship that I went back and checked out later. That really drove it home for me. The fact that we watched last year in that cinematic that these vines came up, literally ripped the things out of the air, and they're still way up there. They're just kind of hanging out, and we now have access because of what we've done. Yeah,
we're falling right into the heart of it.
And this allows us to hide even more things for players to explore. I mean, we've talked previously about like, hey, look, we have fans who have thousands of hours in the game, and they're now still discovering little secrets that we put in since launch. This just gives us even more places, and combining all the ways that you can now traverse through the jungle.
So I think you're going to be able to see this in a minute. Just off to the right-hand side, as I was gliding through, the explorers in the game, those of you who like to look around and find all of the little hidden things, you have so much to do. Yeah, you can see it off to the right here. That is a jumping puzzle on the side of a cliff that you can only get to by gliding. So I headed over later, and again, I didn't capture all of this amazing stuff until after we were done and I was still exploring. You finish this jumping puzzle, you go up and around, and I found a little cave and went through this tunnel and found some content that I would not have seen it. And I'm not going to give it away because I don't want to ruin it and everybody would completely freak out.
27 days.
27 days, you guys. Look for that jumping puzzle and do it, and go through the little tunnel at the end.
Yeah.
There's more than one, though. I mean, we have those hidden all over the map.
I'm going to say 2 words: burrowing chickens.
This is new. I haven't found this.
That's all I can say. That's all I can say.
Oh, you guys, doesn't he need to tell me where? Can you like, once we're back at work, can you like at least point and guide me?
I don't want to spoil it.
He gave you 2 words.
Yeah, I gave you the 2 words I can give you.
Burrowing chickens.
But it just sounds like a thing you made up. It's like, hey, what are the weirdest words I can put together? All right, I'm gonna have to take a look and try to find this. Yeah, and this is exactly, it's killing me now, but there is content just hidden everywhere, and the only way you can get to it is by gliding. You will also notice there are some little hovering, they almost look like hot air balloons as far as their silhouette. Have you guys seen these?
Oh, yeah.
Did you do them?
I didn't personally do them, but it's sort of part of the things that we learned a lot from Dry Top. We learned a lot from Silver Waste. It's about how to sort of cohesively build a map so that the way the players participated feels very push-pull, feels very engaging, and so that is actually is a big part of it. Those silhouettes that you're seeing is a part of our of the story of Verdant Brink.
Yeah. So I was flying past these, and I kept seeing them, and then something else would catch my eye, and I would get distracted. This is like Colin talked about earlier. You go in with a goal, but then there's so much else going on that you wind up doing 10 other things. And I finally, about the 4th or 5th time, I finally passed one and thought, I'm going to go over there and see what's going on. There are just these little things hovering in the air. And I got up to it, and you had the interact option. I hit F to interact, and it said you require a key to open this chest. And I was like, oh, this is a loot chest. This is a loot chest. They're just hovering everywhere in midair, and it's like pieces of packed wreckage, right? Yeah, that's just hanging out there.
You can look at it as kind of similar to what we did in the Silver Waste with like the buried chests and stuff like that. Like it's more content evolution from what we learned from the lessons from Living World and what we brought into the jungle. You see that even in terms of like the kind of map-wide events that we started with the Silver Waste, where everyone was building up the pack readiness, so you could actually go into the caverns down below to beat the bosses, and then go and fight like the vine tendrils and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We have that now in each of these 4 maps as well, where there is some kind of unique meta or overall objective that the entire map is playing together and trying to accomplish. We had kind of the day-night cycle that you've seen in Verdant Brink, but each of the other 3 maps has their own mechanic, and some of them are leading up to some giant bosses that we haven't really talked about yet, and some, unfortunately, that we won't be talking about until you get a chance to see them in live. But we are bringing back some of or not bringing back, but we've made some brand new world bosses that you'll see in the same veins that you saw like Tequatl or like the evolved jungle worm, that kind of stuff. So we're actually bringing in some new encounters and new huge bosses for players to come and overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to look back and see, like in Dry Top and Silver Waste. I wanted to say in Dry Top and Verdant Brink, but we're not technically there yet. The ways that we started using that verticality, like with the crystals in Dry Top, just to see the progression and how we started making this work and how we started exploring that vertical space.
I think a lot should be said about the work and the evolution of what our environment artists have done. Josh did really amazing work on Dry Top and Silver Waste, and I think now that we have these other maps coming in, the folks that were watching that really took that to heart and really just made some incredible stuff. I really got to give a shout out to those guys.
Oh yeah, no, we couldn't do our jobs without them. Like, and they're always pushing us too. Like it goes both ways. Like we try and build some crazy new content that no one, like nobody foresee coming, and then they'll try and one-up us and be like, hey, well, now we've got this new tech and we're going to do this thing, and now you have to populate it with your content. And so, it's this nice little, not rivalry, but it's like we feed off each other in terms of trying to see how much more we can put in, how much more, creativity and in some cases insanity we can put into the maps for the players to enjoy.
It's good insanity. It's very, very fun insanity. We talked yesterday, I think, about how there's so much going on in the game that you just need to constantly be looking and pay attention to your surroundings. You're not just saying, okay, there's a heart on this part of the map, I'm going to aim straight for it. But you need to keep an eye out. And with these maps, there's so much more. I mean, you're needing to look up, down, left, right, everywhere, because there's going to be something going on. It's the same process, but just exponentially bigger.
I mean, you talk about the like we had the renowned regions in Corteria, and now as we move into the jungle, like we actually took that as an evolution in terms of the style of content, where you actually have these hubs that are opening up. The more events, the more you help out these individual groups of NPCs who are either trapped or who are helping explore or helping aid you in the fight against Mordremoth and his forces. You see we're evolving those outposts and then opening things like adventures, jumping puzzles, access to new content, and then opening up even more content on top of that. Like we wanted to create each one of these locations as here's kind of a central battlegrounds point. Here's where you can find those things. Think of it like a base renowned region, and then layering more and more content on top of it, so you can actually build out the environment and build out the story associated with it as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned something just now about how you get into these maps and you start seeing all these things that are going on. It's actually, I've run into a couple of times where, like, I played these past beta weekends, and I'm all over the place with my content. My content's in all these different maps, so a lot of the time I spend just sort of like teleporting around, like, because I get to be a little cheaty dev, right?
Yeah.
And so I got into the day of the weekend, and I was playing with one of the designers who actually did a lot of the work on Verdant Brink, and thank goodness that she was there, because I needed like a chaperone. I was falling off a cliff, so I didn't know how to get to from one point A to point B, and like I stopped and I thought about it for a second. I was like, oh man, I love this feeling. It's all new to me and it's all fun.
Isn't it great?
It's super great.
It's kind of funny, right? Like when we first started playing Guild Wars 2, okay, we now have the concept of dodge rolling. Have something that's new and casting abilities on the move and things like that, and you just get so used to it that you go play other styles of games. It's like you can't do that. Well, then we started going into the jungle and we started doing gliding, and then we went back to Quarteria like on live before the expansion's ready, and we don't have that. And so intrinsically we're like, okay, deploy glider, wait, and we're cratered.
Oh no, and we're dead. The falling damage trait doesn't even help.
Yes, exactly. So like it's nice to have that kind of that newness in terms of exploration and understanding of where we're going with not just the pacing of the game, but also the content, the story, and everything else. Like there is an element of this that is going to feel very new the first time you step into the jungle in some ways that you felt when you first walked into the world of Tyria for Guild Wars 2.
Absolutely.
Well, did you see, I don't know if you guys watched the Guildhalls live stream I did with Link a while back. It was the first time, and we're making use of that space in Guildhalls too. I mean, the Guildhalls are just, I was gliding all over the place, but that first time I hadn't really had a lot of experience with gliders. To this day, I maintain something bugged, but I was like, okay, Link like glided down, he was going to show me something else, and this is all live. So I jump off the edge, and my glider deployed, and then I hit space. I have no idea how it deployed on its own, but then I was just...
Yep, you cratered.
Yeah, I was an enormous crater, and there is a certain learning curve there, even though that was not my fault. It was definitely not me.
No, it was totally not your fault.
No, I'm pretty sure Link just reached over while I wasn't looking.
Yeah.
Fix that. So this just going back into that, this vertical space gives us so much more content to play with, and you can't say burrowing chickens, but you can. I want to know what the best part is for you. What are you most looking forward to once Heart of Thorns is live?
Man, I want to talk about maps we haven't talked about, and I can't. I got to hold back. So Verdant Brink.
So if it was up to me, you could, but
sure. There is a.
Just FYI,
I believe one of our designers, Lisa, actually put in or got an animation for the Itzel of him like whittling a sharp stick. And it's not like an idle animation. We very consciously chose to put him in a place where you got to find him, and he's just sort of this calm. They have their everyday. They do their things. They play their little lutes, and they whittle
I saw
their
that
sticks.
guy.
Exactly. So there are a lot of actually like subtle things that we've placed in a lot of places. Like I said, those hidden things that are just they're the unique flavors of like what everyday life is with the Itzel. And I think that those are my favorite things that I'm looking forward to in Verdant Brink.
All right, you play a lot like I do, all over the place. Yeah. You have to pick one. I know, it's awful.
No, it's ultimately coming down to I'm looking forward to the challenging content that now that we can do even more with. Like, we can play a lot more with movement, and so like one of the bosses that we're putting out there for on those epic scales, it forces you to move around a lot more and forces you to think about like how do you traverse locations and the fastest way to get from point A to point B to avoid either massive attacks, to do damage to these creatures or things like that. So that becomes more fun for me because like. It's, again, like I was saying, like you learn to dodge roll, you learn to glide, you learn what's next, and being able to use these masteries and make more meaningful choices to your character and the evolution of your character, I think is going to be really exciting, not just for me, but I'm going to love watching how the players overcome this.
Yeah.
What order are they going to choose to unlock their masteries? I saw some people posting that based on the conversation we had yesterday, that, like I was totally recommending gliding is the one you need to do first, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like there's all these other ones that are really good and are going to unlock more styles of content that you can unlock content for people around you. It's not just about like everything about the individual. It's about how we as a community are going to go through these all of these maps and unlock all this content, and ultimately take the fight to Mordremoth.
Yeah. Well, the awesome thing about Masteries is that you don't have a time limit. You can unlock them all, and you have lots of game to play. Yeah. So, all right, you guys, keep your eyes open. Find me those burrowing chickens. Seriously, I'm going to drive you up the wall about that, right? Until I find out where they are and what this is about. Keep your eyes peeled in all directions, and just enjoy gliding. Something else, one more thing that I was going to mention. We had talked about, I think it's Gorseval that like rears up this big attack, and everybody has to glide, or you're just dead, right? Yeah. We have put these things everywhere, so keep your eyes open and enjoy all of the parts of the maps of Heart of Thorns. We'll see you guys later.